Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here at 4:30 as we reach the end of the month. And without a new state budget in place for the first time in 4 budget cycles, there is not an approved budget in place in Madison on July 1st. But there are signs today that there could be one by the end of the week. Both the Assembly and the Senate are on notice that they could be voting on a new budget on Wednesday. The Joint Finance Committee has a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning starting at 9 a.m., expecting to finish up work on the budget that has been negotiated between leaders over the last couple of days. Remember, last Friday, the JFC delayed their meeting for 12 hours before meeting, but they left some of the big ticket items for a later date. Now, those include tax cuts, child care accounts funding, and UW system funding. The budget proposal has to advance out of the Joint Finance Committee first, so all eyes are going to be on that meeting tomorrow morning to see if any progress has been made in talks between the governor and leadership for both caucuses in the legislature. All right, for a better understanding of where things stand tonight, let's bring in the expert on state politics. And we welcome in, of course, J.R. Ross, the editor of WisPolitics.com. So, J.R., what your ear to the ground today, what do you think is happening behind closed doors?
They're getting close to a deal if they haven't already sealed it now. That's a deal amongst the leadership. You now got to sell it to the members of the caucuses. So that's for their to-do list. The Joint Finance Committee will convene at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Now that's their start time posted. Their posted start time on Friday, and that 12 hours after it was posted. So may not be right on time on Tuesday, but they'll get to work on knocking out the remaining areas of the budget. And then the floor action can start on Wednesday. Both houses are noticing an extraordinary session. All that means it's a procedural move to the Capitol to allow for quicker passage. It removes a procedural hurdle they could face, but they want it done by the end of the week, and they're kind of on path to do it, assuming they get enough of the rank and file to buy into the deal negotiated by the heads of the caucuses and the governor's office.
Let's talk about that rank and file, because yesterday on Upfront, now it was an interview you taped with Matt on Friday night, but you talked about the math problem in the Senate. Could they get enough votes, which is what you're talking about here with the caucuses. And we also know, talking to Matt on Friday, and then from what you said yesterday, there's been this recruiting going on of Democrats in the Senate. So is this a one-to-one relationship? If they recruit too many Democrats, are they going to lose the same amount of Republicans? Talk to us about this math problem.
Excellent question. So remember, 33 members of the state Senate, 18 Republicans, 15 Democrats. We already know that Chris Capping of Delafield is basically saying he's all but a no. Steve Nass of Whitewater, all but a no. Rob Hutton of Brookfield voted no on the budget 2 years ago, put a column on Friday saying, hey, we had this delay. Let's take a step back and try and go over the budget line by line, essentially, and look for ways to lower spending. Not a great sign for support, right? So let's say you're at 15 right now. Okay, in theory, you need at least 2 Democrats to get to 17 votes and pass the budget. The thing I've been hearing from people in the Capitol is the more you make this budget palatable to Governor Evers, a Democrat, and his colleagues to get more Democratic votes, the more you risk losing Republicans. So where is that sweet spot where it's good enough to get the governor on board and he can get a few members to come along in the Senate, but also not lose some Republicans? You need to get more and more Democrats. There's some kind of a sweet spot in there somewhere. The question is, where is it exactly?
All right, so if we see this JFC meeting delayed tomorrow, and again, as you mentioned, scheduled for 9 a.m., we all know what happened on Friday, you already alluded to it. If we start to see that get delayed tomorrow, would that be indicative of the problems you just laid out?
Depends. I mean, sometimes they're delayed because they're drafting the actual language of what they want to do. So they're meeting all day today. They met all day Friday. They were in meetings. I'm talking about lawmakers.
Sure.
On Thursday, I walked in the conference or the hearing room on Friday for Joint Finance. And you saw the leadership of the caucuses at 8, 9 o'clock at night hanging out in the side room talking about things. So they were hard at work over the weekend getting this thing done. So we'll see. It might be language. It could be a delay for that. But I don't really read too much in it. If it gets to be like they're delayed to 2 o'clock and then 4 o'clock and then 6 o'clock tomorrow, then yeah, there could be an issue there.
All right. Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu this morning on an interview in a Manitowoc radio program said he believes that they will be able to get something done and vote on Wednesday. That followed the suit, as you mentioned earlier. The Assembly was already planning a vote. That's all set to go. If for some reason, JR, this falls apart before the 4th of July, how long could it be then before it gets done?
Could, I mean, weeks or months. I've talked before. There's no real pressure other than symbolic of getting a budget done now. Today's the end of the fiscal year. The government's shut down. Nothing happens in terms of taxes or day-to-day spending. You get to be an issue really if you have a, not just a months, but a year-long delay. Medicaid program, for example, it's 1.6 billion additional state dollars to keep that program as is. At some point in that budget, you'd run out of money to pay for Medicaid. Now that would not happen until likely end of 2026, early 27. So here's ways away from that stuff. And there are other smaller, other things that could happen, but there's no real pressure or a breaking point in the next couple months where things would fall apart because of no budget.
JR, I'm curious if the folks you have talked to, is there any pressure on this process coming from the gubernatorial race in 2026? We all know, you and I have talked about this many times, the governor's not going to announce his intentions until the budget is done. So if a budget doesn't get done and this gets pushed back, does that impact the race? Are you hearing any concerns from the folks you talk to, especially on the Democratic side, if this is going to impact what happens with the governor's race negatively?
No, the other contenders or possible contenders, they want to know as soon as possible because they need to get up and running and start raising money and building infrastructure. For Evers, remember, state law in Wisconsin allows political parties to take unlimited donations and then make unlimited transfers to candidates. Governor Evers, State Democratic Party, have been great partners in that the last few years. So Evers, there's no real rush because he could flip that switch in July, August, September, and there'd be a flood of money that could come into the party and help him out get, up and running essentially. But he wants to get it done sooner than later. You don't want to drag that out. If he's going to run, it helped to get it out there. He's going to run to the same with everybody else what he's planning to do. And again, if he's not going to run, then for the others, you give them the courtesy of time to start building campaigns because it's tough to get one off the ground from scratch, especially these days.
Are you hearing of any hand wringing over there on the part of the people that would be involved should he decide not to run?
There's not intense pressure on the governor from what I've heard
to
make a decision. I mean, yeah, they want him to get going. I get the sense from anybody really in Madison that they're kind of trying to push Evers outright. And what I've heard is like national folks, they want Evers to run. They see him as a sure thing, quote unquote. Not that he would win for sure, but he's assured he's a candidate, right? He's raised the money, he's run before, he got name ID. And, the age is something you have to talk about. From people I've talked to, others who engage with Governor Evers, he's not having a Biden-esque type, term here. But yes, he would be 79 at the end of his third term. People have said over and over again, he likes the job. As long as his health is doing all right, his wife is all right, his team is interested in another term, likely he would run. The caveat I've heard is, though, you don't want to wake up in 3 years and go, I can't do this job anymore. I can't do as well as I used to. So that's something you have to consider for the governor and the people around him.
All right, that will be the next big talking point once they get this budget wrapped up here in Madison, perhaps this week. JR, thanks as always for the time and the insight.
Anytime.